New all-time highs in the market. The S&P 500 was up 1.23%, closing at 68.7516. We've had a couple of big gap ups the last couple of trading sessions as we've broken out above this big resistance level at 67.50. We talked about this in last night's video, and the continuation today just shows the bullish momentum is indeed coming back into the market. And we're seeing the gamma exposure at the 7,000 strike. This level has been our end of year target going back for the last couple of months now. And the prominence of this gamma exposure concentration has really grown, especially over the last couple of weeks. Coupled with that, we've seen a huge drop in volatility over the last 6 or 7 trading sessions. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. And another point I just wanted to bring up is that we are entering into our upper dealer cluster zone. Of course, this dealer cluster zone has shifted up, but the fact that we are coming up in here into the 6,900 to 7,000 zone gives me a little bit of pause. We could see some dealer selling pressure being added into the market on top of other sellers potentially taking profits at some point this week. We're not expecting a big top anytime soon, but this could lead to some consolidation or even a slight pullback in the coming days. So that's something we want to watch out for. However, any pullback that does materialize would likely be a buy the dip opportunity. One other point that I'd like to make is the gamma exposure closing level today above 3 billion. You can see just how wild on a 0 DTE basis the gamma exposure was, especially at the end of the day. So this shows an extreme reading, just reflecting the potential for some increased dealer selling pressure like what we were discussing earlier.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, very interesting day for the S&P. Let's take a look at IWM, which actually spent most of the day around the 250 area, closing at 250.30. Which is still a large GEX cluster, and we saw a lot of volume there as well. Similar to the S&P and the NASDAQ, we see IWM stretched fairly far above the whole moving average. Typically, when we're this far away, we see price meet the whole at some point. As long as IWM holds 250, we could travel higher to reach the 255 or 260 area. One last quick observation. Interestingly, while SPX reached an extreme positive GEX reading, IWM actually fell from positive back into negative territory. So some interesting divergences that we'll continue to cover as we progress through tonight's video, but definitely wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Sean. With bullish momentum ramping back up in the market, I wanted to take a look at some of the high flyers from earlier in the year. Let's go back to Palantir. Palantir today up 2.45%. Closing at 189.16 and breaking above this big resistance which has formed over the last couple of months just around the 185 level. We've been highlighting the gamma exposure at the 200 strike going back for a couple of months now, showing that this could be a year-end target as we continue to see volume in the options market coming in at that 200 strike. For example, today we saw over 100,000 contracts traded at that 200 strike, and that's really been the case going back for a couple of months now. A lot of volume coming in, market participants expecting a big year-end rally up to that level. In terms of our portfolio, we're actually considering putting on an iron butterfly targeting that 200 strike. Iron butterflies are primarily a theta decay strategy, and so of course the closer we get to that 200 strike over the next several weeks, the more profits we could potentially make. But when I look out into the November 21st expiration, we can actually sell a 20-point wide iron butterfly for around $15.67, meaning that our max risk is $4.33. And this is a great example of how we use gamma exposure along with our option portfolio strategy to initiate new positions based on the current market positioning. By the way, if you want to track our trades in real time as we manage our options portfolio, you can become a member at geeksoffinance.com. You can also get a sneak peek of what we're trading right now by checking out our community Discord. I'll put a link in the description below to both of those so you guys can take a look.
Anthony, as we've seen the market leaders rise, of course, the VIX has just been absolutely crushed the last few days, and it might be a case of too far too fast. I would definitely say that for now, it's bullish that the VIX has broken below that trend that we saw, and we did get the spike to 25, which is exactly what we were looking for. Now the question is, now that the VIX's technicals are buried and we're down in this thick zone of negative GEX between 15 and 16, once again, it's not looking like we have a lot of downside left for the VIX. The market could certainly rise while the VIX rises. That's something that we've seen typically in the past when the market has been very strong and is reaching a point of reversal. And in this case, the burden's really on the bears side to get the VIX back above these key whole and 9-period SMA moving averages. But for now, even if we see the VIX spike, my guess is that it's likely to meet some significant resistance in the 18 area. Despite, the volume that we see at 25 today, the VIX would imply that, perhaps the market's due for a little bit of a breather, even as we continue toward those higher targets of 6,900 and 7,000 in coming weeks.
All right, next let's take a look at Netflix. Netflix was basically flat during the trading session, closing at 1,094.56. Netflix had earnings about a week ago and had a big drop from the mid 1,200 range, opening around 1,150 and trading all the way down to now below 1,100. Interestingly enough, when we look at the gamma exposure picture, large gamma exposure, both positive and negative GEX at that 1,100 strike. Look at all the volume that came in today at that 1,100 strike as well. 15,000 contracts, which is pretty substantial for Netflix. This to me looks like a potential floor of support in Netflix. We're seeing that both from a price standpoint as well as our lower dealer cluster zone. We're also seeing volume at higher strikes, for example, at 1150 and at 1200. So this is a name that we're going to be looking at potentially adding a position on, but I don't want to jump the gun just yet. We want to get some sort of confirmation. What ideally I'd like to see is price begin trading above this 50 EMA on the 15-minute chart. We're on a shorter term time frame here just to show the recent action since earnings. But ultimately, if this is a low somewhere in this zone right around the 1100 strike, we'd like to see confirmation by trading above that moving average and ideally getting some momentum to the upside. A name like Netflix does have the potential to easily run 100 to 200 points within a few weeks, and so that's one of the reasons why we think this actually has some potential to get back up to at least that 1200 strike by year end. There's a number of different strategies that we could play to take advantage of this, and we'll be discussing this both in our live stream as well as in our community Discord here in the next few trading sessions.
Thanks, Anthony. Let's look at SMH. I like SMH because it's one of the leading subsectors within QQQ, including NVIDIA and some of the other leading semiconductor names. And it really had a big breakout from Friday's gap up, but we're right in this upper dealer cluster zone. This is a zone where we would expect dealer behavior to potentially shift toward selling. Even if we don't see the price drop, we may see consolidation sideways. Now, the Keltner channels are very bullish. They're pointing higher. And so, we could easily see a move up toward 370, which would be closer to the top of this channel. 370.83 actually is the exact upper Keltner channel. And we see GEX at 370 even as soon as the 31st when we look at our 3D map. From this point, from 360 up to this 370 area, we may see SMH retrace down toward the 350 area, and we actually saw volume just below 335. There's no indication right now that that's a target that will be reached in the next day or two, but we really want to watch what happens around the 350 area if we see SMH pull back in the next few days for clues as to whether we continue higher toward as much as 385, which we see appear with positive GEX, or if we're going to see a little bit more of a consolidation period before more upside. So keep an eye on SMH as well.
And guys, for a limited time, you can get $300 off our yearly portfolio manager tier subscription. Use code FALL2025 at checkout. We do have a few spots remaining, but this promotion is going to be ending soon, so definitely take advantage of it while you can. Members get full access to our gamma exposure dashboard, our option flow analytics tools, as well as our algorithmic trading strategies. And you'll also get access to the premium channels in our community Discord. There's a ton of great traders in there sharing their own trade setups and strategies. And you also can track our trades in real time as we manage our options portfolio. So it's a great resource. You definitely don't want to miss it. I'll put links in the description below to all of that so you guys can check it out. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.